All right, stat students, we're going to look at sampling bias. Okay, so things that come up that make results not accurate or not, more specifically, not able to generalize to the population, meaning like it's not an accurate representation of the population when you take your sample and you collect your information. So we're going to look at some vocab. So this is a kind of vocab intensive when we think about what's going on. There are two samples or sampling methods that are considered bad, and they are not random, right? So that's one thing that you want to pay attention to if I'm talking about convenience samples and voluntary response samples. These two things here, these are considered not random. So if you're looking at a problem and it's talking about randomly selecting people, you're not talking about these two things. Okay, so that's the first kind of aspect. A convenience sample is really what it says it is. It's like the person that's collecting the data is getting the people that are easiest to reach. All right, not randomly selecting a group and finding them. It's like going down the street and just asking the people that are there. So that's convenience, not indicative of the population, right? Only the people that they asked. Voluntary response is posing a question and having people volunteer to get into the sample and answer the questions. So also not an issue, not a good way to get data. The people that usually volunteer are the people that are passionate, most passionate about that. So when we think about a voluntary response, the problem with that is that the people that are most passionate are the ones that are going to participate. So if you ever identify a voluntary response and they ask you about the issue, it's talking about the people that are most passionate. Okay. All right. Both of these are not representative of the population. So another thing that you would like to look out for when you do that stuff. Okay. So that's convenience and voluntary. Now, you can still have a random sample and it be bad, like cause bias. So there are other things that come up. So you can randomly select people, but if you have undercoverage here, you are still leaving out people from that process. So your folks are still left out from choosing by the way they chose a sample. Okay, that's undercoverage. Undercoverage and non-response can be very confusing. They almost sound the same. Okay, so an issue with undercoverage is that a whole group is left out by the way that the sample was designed. Non-response is when you randomly chose individuals but cannot be contacted or refuse to participate. So if there's language with people not being able to be contacted, that tells you that you're in a non-response bias. Okay, so that's the part that kind of tips you off and changes it from undercoverage to non-response. And then a response bias is with the questioning, people will lie, right? So think about if somebody asked you if you did drugs and you actually do. Well, you might not want to tell them that. So you might lie. So there are things with questioning where people will give incorrect responses. So think about that, and that's a response bias. It's really in the person's response when they're not telling the truth. Okay, so that's the idea.